All right, interesting. All right, now I want to go to taking a real life application because, there's a lot of conflict in this world. And we had talked about right now, right where you live, there's gun shooting, probably minutes away from where you live. There's the Paris bombing. And now, a lot of conflict about do we let immigrants in? Do we not let immigrants in? And people getting very strong and strident about their point of view. There's almost, I could probably spend the whole show listing all the political candidates and people being triggered by Donald Trump. There's racism, there's all this, just a litany of things in which conflict is just brewing. And I don't want to get into that because this is not about being into politics. So I'm going to take kind of an innocuous thing. But I think that this innocuous example can be applied to any of the examples that I just mentioned above. So I want to talk about a situation. You're a manager at work. You have a person who's in the meeting who you view is caustic and is causing a certain amount of, disruptiveness, disharmony within the whole office. You have someone who, and I think we all know who that person is, right? We have a person like, oh yeah, that person, a problem in the office. They're always, long litany of judgments. And then, and then can't we just do something with this person in the meeting? Can't we just shut this person up? Can't this person just be more positive? Whatever it is. Okay, so let's just take that example because that's probably, again, I think that could be applied to immigration. It could be applied to the political candidates. It's a general theme where you have a conflict with another person. Now, one of the chapters that you have in your book, The Tao of Happiness, has this idea of getting rid. You said you're all consuming. So one of it is letting go of your attachment of I view as being right. And you write, your all consuming attachment is not a person. It cannot love you, look after you, or care for you like a person can. The love. So it's being attached to an idea. In this case, I'm right, you're wrong. And you talk about being attached. What would the Tao say about your attachments of being right? Like you're right, that person's wrong, they're irritating me. What would I learn from the Tao?
Well, there are so many parts to that question. We'll
Yeah.
tackle it one by one. That particular story about attachments is illuminating. Basically, what that story is about this man who loves horses and is feeding a horse, and then one day, accident happens, and the horse, kicks him and kills him. But the horse has no awareness that this owner of the horse is someone who loves horses with all his heart and continues on just being a horse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that with attachments. We may be so attached to something, but that something is not attached to us. And therefore, one day it can damage us, just like the horse powerful kick to the chest, killing the owner instantly. We can be injured, we can be harmed by the negative impact of that attachment. So that's very real. I also don't want to necessarily avoid talking about the Tao perspective on the attacks because there are some very solid ideas that can contribute to the way that we react to all of these, this violence, this hatred, this fear that's happening now in the world. It's probably the time that we need the Tao perspective more than ever.
Okay.
Now, about that person at the office, which we all know who that is.
Right.
What I would advise to everyone is that there are no simple solutions. There's no clever comebacks that will defuse that person, defeat him, humiliate him in front of everyone. That'll happen in a movie. Unfortunately, our lives don't happen like Hollywood scripts.
Okay.
It's truly unfortunate. So so does that mean that we have no choice but to suffer? This bully at the office, this domineering personality? Well, it doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that there's a reason for things that happen in life. There's a purpose. There's a reason for that person to have manifested in your existence. Now, this will be heaven if we don't have any obstacles, if we don't have any people that are so challenging, such challenging personalities. But that particular heaven will become boring very quickly. We will learn nothing. Everything we do is automatically successful because it is heaven. So after a while, we're bored out of our minds and we want to leave heaven to go someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
in this world, we do have those challenges. They're there for a reason. So let me offer some possible reasons. There are lessons that we're here to learn, and people like that are a pretty good way. They're sort of like the weights that you find in a gym. Lifting those weights, not fun. Okay, you see, you see people grimace, right?
Right.
You see guys like, bro, do you even lift? And
Right.
then next thing you know, they're like, ah. So not a whole lot of fun.
Right.
They do that though for specific reasons. They want to train themselves to become better, to be stronger, healthier, etc. So spiritually, if you think about this world as the gym of life, and we're here to train ourselves, to lift, to become healthier spiritually. So we won't do that by sitting around eating bonbons. That's
Right.
the unfortunate truth. We have to go through some pretty strenuous exercise to get there. So
Okay.
people like that think of them as the
Okay,
exercise.
so whether it's if you're not a fan of Trump, it may be Trump or Hillary. If you're not a fan of Hillary, they may be a challenge to you, or the bombers, or the person in the office that you know is the one that's irritating. View that as someone who is like a weight, forcing you to get stronger, better. That's one way of looking at it. But then what if you just get frustrated? That you get frustrated with that person and you want something to be done. The person steps over the line, right?
Mhm.
Someone bombing, innocent people in Paris. They've clearly stepped over the line. There's going to be instances at work where someone does something where they step over the line. How do you know? And you were talking about how do you know whether to act, whether the action is no action or the action is a small
Just a
shove,
nudge.
or if it's like a plan to put together a response. How does one know what? How would you approach that whole thing?
Well, I'll start out by talking about what is not the authentic Tao. The
Okay.
westernized version of the Tao may say that there's no absolute right or wrong, and therefore we can't sit in judgment of the terrorists, etc. Okay, so that would not be the perspective of the ancient masters from the old days of Tao philosophy in China. Those masters will not hesitate to assess a situation. They will insist on observing without attachment to make the best and clearest decisions possible about difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
The assessment that they make, it's not yes or no, it's not black or white, it's usually a range, a spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
gray shades from positive to negative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always in terms of benefits and welfare to humanity, to people as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we can easily adopt their perspective to take a look at the situation, and we can recognize that warfare, killing, violence, that's clearly very bad.
Right. It does not benefit the whole in any way.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So the action that we take. So you ask about the appropriate action.
Right.
So let me get people to think about what happens at the group level, what happens at the national level, and individual level. Now, when we come together as a society, we human beings, very naturally will create entities meant for protecting the society itself, or the community, or the country.
Yeah.
You
Community
know,
rules or ethics or laws.
law enforcement, the
Right.
sheriff's office,
Right.
police officers, the CIA, FBI, and on the national level, we have the military.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all natural byproducts of what happens when people come together.
Mm-hmm.
It is sort of, it's like the immune system for a larger
That's a great
body,
way of putting it. Yeah.
fight off the infection, kill cancer, stuff like that. So there's nothing, good or bad about that, or right or wrong. It just simply is the nature of things.
Right.
So following the terrorist attacks in Paris, we have seen the French government taking action. We have seen the French military launching airstrikes in Syria. We have seen the manhunts that took place.
Right.
We have seen the investigations that are still taking place now. We have seen the ringleader being dead, basically.
Right.
So these are all to be expected from the Tao perspective, because you cannot expect that the nation would not look after its own best interest in defending itself.
Okay.
Okay? So from the individual perspective, what the Tao says is that recognize that the people who are engaged in this task, the soldiers, the law enforcement officers, they have a grim job to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when they're taking human lives, there's family, relative, friends who are affected by that loss of life as well. They're no less human beings than you or me. So while they do what they must do, what we demand that they do as a society, there's no reason for us to be cheering, to be cheerleading, you know, to be to express, you know, satisfaction or happiness or excitement. It's a grim business. Killing is always like that. Even when you do it out of necessity, there's no celebration.
But even if you use the analogy of an immune system, right? Sometimes your immune system goes awry and it kills healthy cells that it should not be. So you can make the parallel of, okay, you have police killing people who they should not be killing or abusing, and then abusing their given rights. What would the Tao say in that case? Because it's, yes, you need police to and an immune system to make sure that the overall system is healthy, but then sometimes those immune systems make mistakes.
Well, you know, in our world, in healthcare, we have doctors who look into what's going on with your body and, you know, let you know if the immune system is not doing what it should, or perhaps is ineffective, you know, which maps to what we're seeing, you know, with perhaps, you know, reports of police brutality and so
Right.
forth. Now, there are, thanks to advance in science and medical knowledge, medical understanding, we have a variety of ways to address that kind of issue. In society, we have similar analogs to that. So we have, for instance, you know, video cameras now.
Right.
And the good cops are the ones that welcome this, because it's going to help them explain why they took a particular action and not have their actions be twisted out of context, you know, and later on be turned back against them. It's no longer their word against the community. They now have video evidence to back them up. And on the other side of the coin, the bad cops who perhaps relied on, you know, wanted that sense of power from ordering people around, and then maybe rough them up a little bit, that video camera will capture that as well, and therefore they have to watch what they're doing. So that is analogous to healthcare professionals looking after your immune system. So we do have solutions, we do have ways, and here again, we see patterns of the Tao repeating itself at different levels of reality.
Okay, explain to me what you see as a pattern in that particular situation.
It's like the pendulum, swing back
Ah,
and forth. So when you veer too far off in one direction,
right.
you start to create the force to bring it back.
Okay, so like let's say that, you know, someone has a terrorist act, whoosh, you know, they swing it to one direction, and then what happens is over time it kind of, there's going to be some other act whoosh, to kind of swing it so that it reaches some type of equilibrium. So that's
Yeah.
what the Tao would say, right? I mean, this is kind of a balancing of yin yang that's happening.
Well, the Tao is about equilibrium. So remember, we can only take that metaphor so far. We wouldn't want a pendulum of revenge back and forth that keeps on going no matter what, you know. And I talked about movies just a little while ago, rather appropriate since I'm here in Burbank, not too
Yeah.
far from Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
Think about the movies with revenge as a theme. It's always, you know, the someone who's been wronged, and therefore you exact your vengeance, etc. Now, the next movie may be that somebody else is wronged, and as a result of your actions, and come back and take revenge against you. It's a
Right.
never-ending cycle.
Right. Right.
So in the Tao, it's about equilibrium, which means that we're happiest when we're in equilibrium, somewhere in the middle, away from the extremes. So the extremes in this case, you know, in the context of the attacks, there's a couple of different extremes that we can imagine. One is pacifism. Do nothing, let it happen again, we deserve it, that type of pacifism. The other extreme is hatred and responding to violence with overwhelming violence. That's the other extreme. Okay? The middle part is what I call upon everyone to do, and that is the Tao perspective, the Tao response is not one of hatred, it's not one of fear, but one of empathy. Empathy for the victims, empathy to be directed into action, to protect, to defend, to prevent, to take measures to make sure that it doesn't happen again. There's a lot of energy that we can direct it into that, away from useless expressions of anger or hatred or discrimination against a particular group.
Yeah, I think of it almost as going back to in your book, The Tao of Happiness, you talk about how you can do things with ease, right? If you punch someone, they're going to punch you back. And that's not an easy, this is kind of a muscling around, right? I mean, and that doesn't, all it does is create another punch in the opposite direction, right? So if you come up with a plan to say, why is that person punching me in the first place? How can I protect myself from that punch? Like when they come punching, maybe you have like, a punching bag versus that they can just direct their energy towards versus, you punching back. There's probably a dozen strategies out there aside from just punching back. And so going back to what you said very early on, you said, you can either do nothing, like a pacifist situation. You could do a little ding, to kind of push something in a different direction, or you can have a very strong plan. How does one, like in the situation of the terrorist attack? I mean, what I heard you say, put a plan to defend, put a plan to understand, put a plan together. That would be kind of the plan piece. But what is the do nothing or do a ding, little ease? What would that be in these situations?
Well, different situations call for different levels of response, and it's always the appropriate level that we're looking for. So we can certainly run the risk of doing too little or doing too much. And
Okay.
there's going to be times when we want to err on the side of caution, of safety. So with the gun violence, for instance, we started talking about all the shooting that's been taking place. I want to let people know that it's not like that in other parts of the world. There are certainly parts of the world where it's even more dangerous than it is in the United States, no doubt about that. I'm talking about countries that have been influenced by the Tao, that live under some of the principles, some of the philosophies. So if you go to Japan as an example, that's a very safe society. If you travel to Taiwan, you quickly discover that you can be safe there no matter where you happen to be. In the worst neighborhood, you are safer than you can be in Beverly Hills over here. And in Japan, little kids, we're talking little kids that are like 7, 8, 9 years old, routinely travel themselves over great distance without worrying about what's going to happen to them. And people take that for granted. So, pardon me. So they enjoy a certain kind of freedom there. Freedom of movement, freedom from having to worry about personal safety. So I use the word very specifically freedom because here, when we talk about, guns and so forth, that word is going to be used quite a bit as well. Well, I want the freedom to, have
My gun, or right to protect myself if I need to.
exactly.
Wait, but are you using an example? Because my question was about gentle, hard, very a plan. How does that map? I'm having problems connecting your answer to the question.
So, so the skillful actions of the Tao can sometimes create a much bigger result than the effort. So you don't need to strain, or you don't need to devote a lot of resources to create the positive results that you are looking for. So one example that comes to mind is that when we express support for the people of Paris, what is the effective way of doing that? And if you were to ask the Parisians themselves, some people say, "Well, I will pray for you," and the Parisians will say, "Well, no, actually, we've had too much religion already." But they appreciate us thinking about them and expressing that we stand with them. So I'll use another example where minimal action has a very dramatic impact. Think about what happens in the schoolyard when the bully is pushing a kid that the bully intends to pick on. Okay, the bully has a plan that if the kid gets mad and strikes back, then the bully has all the reasons in the world to pulverize the kid. Okay, that's the plan. So I use that as sort of the analogy of terrorists wanting to provoke, wide open warfare as a recruiting tool. Now, the most effective thing for the other kids, what I know in playgrounds, what happens most often is that the other kids will stand around and
Right.
watch,
And just
okay,
watch, not knowing what
and
to
just
do.
watch.
Right.
But if you think about the minimal action that the other kids can do, suppose they stand together with the kid that's being bullied, stand up to the bully, and say, "We don't think this is acceptable. We're united against you." Okay? Now, the bully not getting what he wanted is, whoa, I can't take on all these people at once. Okay, backed up. Yeah. Yeah, you better run, you
Right.
coward, and it goes
Right.
away. So,
Okay, got it. So, like the simple thing of just people standing around, analogous to the Paris thing of just stand and support. Don't pray. That doesn't do anything for me. Just basically stand with me, and that's very simple. Doesn't take a lot of energy, effort. Doesn't take guns. It's just show me that you're there.
and
Interesting.
that is what the terrorists do not want is for all the potential victims to stand together and be united.
Okay, got it. That's a wonderful analogy. We've had Derek Lin, who's talking about his book, The Tao of Happiness.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.